What's up guys, Mike here with Cards Use Sports Cards. I want to get into how to price your sports cards on eBay. Not just to be competitive in a market with thousands of other sellers, but also to make a profit when a buyer does choose your card over somebody else's. We'll talk about some of the price points I use for my cards and why, and best practice do's and don'ts when pricing your cards on eBay. So let's get into it. Before we do, if you want to unlock the secrets of selling and investing in low-end sports cards on eBay, this channel is your go-to source for expert tips, honest insights, and strategies to help boost your eBay sales. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button for me if you want to stay ahead in the card selling game, maximize your profits, and take your eBay card selling business to the next level. You can also check out my other channel at Puck Mike where I open and talk about hockey cards. So we're going to do this video in an alternating list style. One thing you should do, one thing you shouldn't do, should do, shouldn't do. You get the idea. Of course, the first thing, and these are in no particular order here, except this one probably actually should be the first thing, is check what the card is listed for and what it recently sold for. I don't care what anyone says your card is worth. Whatever the market is paying for your card is exactly what it's worth at that time. Doesn't mean that can't go up or down, but if someone's paying $3, it's probably worth around $3. The main exception to this is that the market changes so quickly and sometimes drastically. And just because it's worth $3 today doesn't mean it won't be more or less tomorrow. So just be careful and be honest with yourself, because sometimes we look at a card and say, no, it's worth more than that. And you might be right that in general, over the course of maybe 6 months to a year or a few years, maybe it is worth more than that. But today, it's worth what someone ends up paying for it. The other exception is that you need to look for outliers when researching sold prices, because you do get some sales with weird prices, like an auction that no one bid on and someone sniped up the card for $1. And this is why you need to check active and sold listings to weed out some of those outliers and get a good idea of not just what people are currently paying, but also what the current supply and demand relationship is. Maybe one just sold for $2, but that was 2 weeks ago, and you don't have a super rare card, but lucky you, there's no others listed currently of that card and player. Now that doesn't mean great, I'll charge $1,000, because you still have to consider what demand is out there for that card. Usually if there's a good demand for low-end cards, meaning people are buying them, then there's an oversupply listed on eBay, because flippers like us are all trying to cash in on what's selling. But if there's none listed, find some similar players of the same card, research the player, and make your best guess, which I'll talk about in a minute. One thing you don't want to do is overvalue your card because you think it's worth more, without real research to support it. Would you like to buy my $1,000 card? Not really, but it's really shiny. It's been part of my collection for years. It's worth it, I promise. Doesn't matter what you think the card is worth, apart from real market research. Buyers don't care where you got it, how it was kept, except for condition purposes, how valuable you think it is. They're opening their wallets, not you. And I think it's cool, or I worked really hard to build this collection, doesn't cut it, because the buyer's just gonna ask, well, if it's so valuable, then why are you selling it? So you're not gonna overvalue your card because of any emotional attachment to it. What are you gonna do? You're gonna do research, as I alluded to before. If it's clear what a card is selling for when I first check eBay for the active and sold listings, there's really not much more research that I do. It's been selling around $1 to $2. Most of the current listings are the same. So that's what I'm listing it for. For the ones that do need more research, where do you go and what should you consider? The first thing I do is Google the player's name just to get an idea of their status if I'm not already familiar with them, like rookie, veteran, retired, how their recent performance has been, what team are they on, is their team terrible right now and supposed to be good next year? When it's not a given by looking at eBay what the value is, these are the areas that I consider to help me determine how much to charge. The other thing I'll check if it's not clear is active and sold listings for similar players of the same card. But you want to make sure you're comparing these players fairly. Like, you're not going to say, well, Wayne Gretzky's version of this card sold for $1,000, so this nobody drafted in the 7th round who's played 5 games is probably worth like $900, right? Do your research, but compare fairly when you have to go outside eBay to form your own picture of the card's overall value. The next thing you don't want to do is price yourself out of profit. I've done 22 videos so far on this channel, and this might be the most controversial point among card flippers, but you don't want to price yourself out of profit when it comes to pricing your sports cards on eBay. Now, there's a few exceptions to this that I mentioned in my lessons learned after 1 year flipping sports cards video, but if you've sourced your cards correctly, meaning you have very high profit margins that allow you to charge fair prices while still making profit, then you should have minimal occurrences where you need to sell your product at a loss. I could probably sell an extra 20 or 30 cards next month if I list them at 99 cents with free shipping. But if I ultimately would be losing money on those cards based on how much I paid for them and how much it costs to fulfill the order, why would I do that? Think of all the effort it takes to source a card, list it, sell it, ship it. Remember, we covered my entire process in the last video. The life cycle of selling just one card takes a lot of work, especially if you're just a small business like me, and I'm assuming most of us are. Is it worth it to just give that card away? So if you can, don't price yourself out of profit. Every collection I buy gets a SKU that gets tied to each eBay listing. From here, I can quickly see how much profit I would make on a card based based on a projected sale price. 9 times out of 10, and especially if the card is priced fairly, I'm not gonna accept an offer if I'm gonna lose money on the card. It just doesn't make sense for me to sell a card at a loss if I can eventually sell it for profit. There's already a lot of cards that I have listed that I'm not gonna make profits on because I paid too much for them, and to make profit, I would have to list them at a price way above market value and they'd never sell. A lot of these cards are from box breaks from my hockey card channel, which we've learned is not a great way to source your inventory if you want to flip cards for profit. So you'll take some losses. That happens in every business, in every industry. Just don't make it the bedrock of your pricing strategy for your business because you'll never be profitable. If you're okay with that, fine, I guess. But you're gonna be here year after year after year, buying new inventory, waiting for that next step. When's the money gonna start coming in? When am I gonna start making profit? Never if you don't stop paying people to take away your cards. Okay, the third thing you wanna do, assuming you are pricing your cards for profit, is price them competitively. I am constantly researching what others are charging for the same cards. For a while, Burbank Sports Cards had a low threshold of 99 cents with free shipping for most of their low-end cards. I've noticed they've upped that to $1.69 lately. Now, being competitive doesn't mean always offering the lowest price. You have to consider that buyers are also getting to know you as a seller, so you might not want the reputation of always having the cheapest price. Especially if you do a lot of offers, it could hurt your leverage in negotiations if someone knows you're more likely to accept a very low offer. For me, I don't like to be the lowest or the highest for most low-end cards that I sell. For a lot of inserts where my cost per card is higher than I want it to be for some of the collections I've purchased, and that's something I'm really trying to avoid in the future as I improve my sourcing strategies, but like maybe the cost per card is north of 50 cents per card, then I usually start the card out around $2.99, maybe $2.75 if it's a lesser known player, with free shipping. For cards where my profit margins are much better, lately I've been setting on $1.99 with free shipping. And what I started doing on those listings is taking away the or best offer option. Because if I believe that my price is competitive and I'm gonna make good profit at that sale price, then I figure I'll just list the best price that I think will eventually move the card and allow me to still make money on it. This is something new that I've been experimenting with. You should constantly be evolving your pricing strategy as the market changes. All the more reason to research prices before you list a card. Okay, third thing you don't want to do is assuming a card's value before you list it. Now, I have an example of this in my video when I weigh the pros and cons of using Card Dealer Pro, but I can't tell you how many times I've assumed a card was only going to sell for $1 or $2, only to research recent listings to find that it was selling for $4, $5, maybe even more. It definitely happens pretty frequently. Enough where I pretty much check every card value before listing. By default, I have to because remember, I'm using the sell one like this feature on eBay to list my cards from existing listings. So I have to search for the card on eBay anyway, and I'm going to see the current prices in that process. Some sellers use different methods here. I know a lot of sellers are trying to scale their business and essentially trying to get as many listings as possible, as fast as possible. Okay, so if that's the case, do you have time to check comps for every single card? Ultimately, it comes down to having some type of review in place to identify each card's potential value for higher comps in some fashion, whether it's based on your knowledge of the card or the player, or reviewing cards that are more rare by virtue of their features irregardless of the player, like a card numbered to 99, even if it's a nobody, might bring an extra $1 or $2 compared to just a base card of a mediocre player. So if you bought a collection and didn't want to price each card individually, you could at the very least price the ones that you think are worth more based on those two criteria. At the end of the day though, you just don't know, and you could be leaving money on the table if you do that. I know hockey better than any sport, and I still have low-end cards that I list that I would have thought would have sold for $2 max, and it's a $4 or $5 card. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I'm here to make money flipping sports cards. An effective pricing strategy is part of any other business in any industry that sells products. So find what works for you. Just don't let your assumptions consistently steal your profits. All right, number 4 under the do's column, weekly price reviews. I try to review 3 listings a week to see if they're still priced competitively. Are they overpriced, underpriced? Do I need to take new pictures? The sports card market can be like the stock market on steroids in terms of its volatility. So maybe I comped a card at $9 when I first listed it, but 2 months later, now it's selling for around $3. I increase my chances of selling the card if I bring the price down to what the market is currently paying for it. Now, this is hard to do for all your listings on top of sourcing, storing, listing, shipping, so don't beat yourself up thinking you have to do it for every listing, like every day. I do about 3 a week. I start with my highest priced cards, because usually the abundance of supply over demand drives prices down over time for items that haven't yet sold. So I rarely do this price review for items and raise prices. It's usually lowering prices based on recent comps. All right, last thing I'll say you shouldn't do is feel like you need to accept lowball offers. There's definitely pressure here when you get an offer in. I know how it feels. You tell yourself, I could sell this card right now and move this inventory. But again, if you're continuously taking losses on every card you sell just to move product, then you don't have a sustainable business model. And I can't tell you how many times when I get a lowball offer, I either come back with my best offer and a little note and then the buyer accepts, or we go back and forth a bit, they accept at a price we're both comfortable with, or even better, and this has happened before, we go back and forth, they end up declining my offer, and then someone buys that exact card at list price that same day or the next day. So it's okay to be patient a bit when you're selling your cards. Again, it all comes back to pricing for profit, which goes back to sourcing for profit. And just because you don't make a deal with someone today doesn't mean that no one else is ever gonna buy that card. A current customer isn't your last customer. So be patient, don't accept anything you're not comfortable with. And the last thing I'll say you should do is experiment and find what works for you. I offer free shipping on most low-end items in my store. But for a period, I did change my prices and charged a little bit for shipping. And it did not go well. My overall listing impressions dropped. There were some other factors that could have played a part, but ultimately I only changed it so that I could better manage deciphering potential profits between domestic and international sales. But that was for me and not for the customer. And I personally think that free shipping is more marketable and something that more and more buyers look for on eBay. Because there's so many sellers that have a decent price, but then there's a ridiculous shipping charge, $7, $8, $9. What are you shipping it in, gold? So I changed it back to free shipping and I like it a whole lot better and it seems to be working much better. But again, I had to go through that process to find out I didn't like it and that it wasn't gonna work for me and my customers. Experiment with other things, different price points, different sales, different negotiation and offer strategies. The time to try new things is while your business is growing and building that foundation. You don't wanna have 10,000 followers in your store and throw constant curveballs at them because you could turn them off to your business and turn them on to other sellers and it could confuse them. So try new things as you're growing when it comes to pricing your sports cards. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, if you want to unlock the secrets of selling and investing in low-end sports cards on eBay, this channel is your go-to source for expert tips, honest insights, and strategies to help boost your eBay sales. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button for me if you want to stay ahead in the card selling game, maximize your profits, and take your eBay card selling business to the next level. You can also check out my other channel at Puck Mike where I open and talk about hockey cards. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.